ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करभावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। We are discussing the chapter Law of Karma. Before we get into discussing Law of Karma, the few words we need to understand. The two words are Purushartha and Prarabdha, and then other set of three words, Sanchita, Agami, and Prarabdha. So Prarabdha is the common to both. So the three words are, number one is Purushartha and Prarabdha. Prarabdha means that which had started to fructify. Prarabdha means that which has started to fructify. Agami means yet to come. Agami means that which is yet to come. Is it okay?
நீங்க மூவ் பண்றீங்களா?
Yes, I just moved it.
Okay, now it's okay.
Now it's okay.
Now it's okay.
I'm trying with something different today. I get normal machine, I get very confused. With all this new machine, it is getting more and more confusing. Anshu, is it okay?
Yes.
So the two words, Prarabdha and Purushartha. Prarabdha means that which has started to fructify. That is the meaning of the word Prarabdha. That which has started to fructify, and as fructification happens, it goes on diminishing. That is Prarabdha. It has started to fructify. As it goes on fructifying, it gets diminished. Distinct and different from that is Purushartha. Purushartha in English you can translate it as free will. In English it is translated as self-effort. Anyway, in relation to the past, it is Prarabdha. In relation to the future, it is Purushartha. Now, the fundamental misunderstanding between these two, Prarabdha and Purushartha. The fundamental misunderstanding between this Prarabdha and Purushartha is the future is not Prarabdha. Meaning, the future is not destined. Because by definition, Prarabdha is that which fructification has started to happen by definition. So in future, as far as future is concerned, it has not yet started. Therefore, you cannot say the future is predetermined. You can never say the future is destined. The future is determined. You can never say that. So, if you think the future is destiny, then there is no such thing called free will. Then there is no motivation to do anything because it is already determined. That is not the meaning of the word Purushartha. The word Purushartha has this is the first understanding. The first understanding of the word Purushartha is it is in relation to the future. It is in relation to the future means that which you are planning to acquire, yet to acquire. That is Purushartha. Prarabdha means that which is already acquired. That which you are yet to acquire, you can acquire using the free will. So Purushartha implies effort, free will, by which you can acquire the future. So Purushartha is in relation to acquisition, future. Prarabdha is that about which you have already acquired. So is future determined, predetermined? The very word future itself means it is yet to be, it's yet to be born. Since it is yet to be born, it is open. We really do not know. As far as the past is concerned, it is already happened, we know. We know in the sense, whatever we are experiencing now. So, from this we understand, at any given point of time, there are these two parallel forces, Prarabdha and Purushartha. What is it that a human being is trying to acquire? The Purushartha, using the self-effort, free will, what is it that a human being is trying to acquire? There is a materialistic aspect, there is a moral aspect, and then there is the religious aspect. There is a material aspect. The material aspect is Artha and Kama. And then there is the moral aspect. The moral aspect is Dharma. And then the spiritual aspect. The spiritual aspect is called Moksha. So, technically, Purushartha is defined as four: Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Dharma refers to the moral component, moral ethical component. Artha, Kama refers to the material component. Artha is that which is about acquisition, security. Kama is that which is about happiness. So Kama is desire. Desire means fulfillment. Fulfillment implies happiness. Therefore, Kama in Kama means happiness. Artha means security. So, what is it that a human being is trying to acquire? He is trying to acquire security. He is trying to acquire happiness. He is trying to the moral and ethical part, which is called dharma. The law of karma comes and says, for acquiring artha and fulfilling kama, you can't do anything that you like, for there is a consequence. So might as well be guided by some principle so that you don't face negative consequences. That is the artha kama. Are you able to follow? The human pursuit is towards fulfilling artha. Artha means wealth first. Wealth for what? Wealth for security. And fulfilling desire for kama, happiness. Again, you can very loosely say wealth is also for happiness. But wealth has a very specific component. The very specific component of wealth is security. So in life, there is security. In life, there is happiness. After a while, you realize that wealth is not giving security. Then you go to dharma for security. Ethical values, moral values. You try to follow some moral, ethical values because of the principle dharma. Why? Because you understand life has a continuity. If life doesn't have continuity, dharma becomes irrelevant to life. Meaning, a sinner also dies, a saint also dies. From the bones, you can never know whether it is the bone of a sinner or bone of a saint, isn't it? You can never know that difference from the bone. So, if both dies and if there is no continuity to life, it is absolutely foolish to be ethical and moral. Because you can do whatever you want, and anyway death is going to neutralize everything. What difference does it make whether you are why do you have to struggle to be a giver? Why do you have to struggle to have this moral, ethical values, principles? And why does one have to suffocate oneself with all these unnecessary principles? He says you have to learn this dharma and you got to abide by dharma because life has a continuity. Are you able to follow the sequence? Purushartha is that which confirms the continuity of life. And it is the continuity of life that makes dharma relevant. Therefore, the third Purushartha is dharma. Okay, you have this artha kama, dharma, you lead a very good life, you lead a very comfortable life, all that is fine. You are not what agitates others, don't agitate you. What bothers others, don't bother you. You have led a very, you can say, a fulfilled, contented, whatever life it is. And then you realize that there is something more to life. That is moksha. So Purushartha is always in relation to acquisition, in future, seeking, attainment. And what are the four things that you seek, trying to attain? Security, happiness, ethics and morals, because life has a continuity. Just as you want to protect your present, you want to protect your future too. That's where dharma comes in. If there is no future, present you are free. Meaning, as I said before, being a sinner or being a saint has no meaning. In fact, it is better to be a sinner than being a saint. Why? Because at least the sinner enjoys everything in life, no? And the sinner is like our movie villains. 2.5 hours, they are the enjoying person. They enjoy everything. Okay, last 2 minutes they get beaten up and they die. And we never see the hero enjoying anything, isn't it? Life becomes so foolish like that. If there is no dharma, if life has no continuity. But then we understand life has there is a continuity to life. And that continuity to life is what we call as reincarnation. Life doesn't end. Life doesn't end with death. Why did I bring in death in this context? Because that is the one sure thing that's going to happen. It may happen now, it may happen 20 years later, it may happen 40 years later, but that is the one thing that's going to happen for sure. In the Kathopanishad, Nachiketas asks this as a third boon to Yama. He asked for 3 boons. Sorry, he didn't ask for 3 boons. Yama granted him 3 boons. Because Nachiketas, he made Nachiketas to wait. So he gave him, since I made you to wait, 3 boons. He said, okay. First 2 boons, straight away, whatever Nachiketas asked, he granted. The 3rd boon, when Nachiketas asked, Yama says, even the best intellects, the gods, they themselves don't know answer to these questions. They themselves don't ask these questions. Why are you asking? And what is the question that Nachiketas asked? A very beautiful question that he asked. Does life have continuity? Some say there is no continuity. Some say everything ends with death. Some say life has a continuity. Tell me whether it has a continuity or not. He said, you have whether there is a continuity or not. Why asking for continuity? Continuity is very important because it is the established law of karma. Established law of karma. I am having some.
Voice is breaking, sir. Voice is breaking.
No, I am getting this message. Your internet is not stable. I thought human beings are not stable. Yeah. Even all that human being produces also is not stable. Saying your internet connection is unstable, and I don't know what to do with that. We'll continue. This is our prarabdha for today. Our prarabdha for today. So we'll continue. In case if it is very not clear or confusing, again we'll repeat it, no problem. So, law of karma is an important lesson in Vedanta because it is law of karma that establishes the continuity of life. The continuity of life brings about a responsibility. The moment I understand there is a continuity to life, there comes a responsibility. And then comes a suffocation after a period of time. What is the suffocation? How long to go through this cycle again and again and again? How long will I? First, I understand life as a continuity. Very difficult to accept life as a continuity. Even most of the people in this country, we know there is life after death. We know life after death, we go to next Janma. They say it not understanding what they are saying. Because if you understand that you are going to have another Janma, you will know how to make proper use of Purushartha. If you realize, if you recognize that you are going to have another Janma, straight away you will know how to make proper use of your Purushartha. How does that work? It works like this. How does it work? It works like this. What I am today is what I did is because of what I did yesterday. If I am today, whatever I am today is because of what I did yesterday. It means what? I see myself and I don't want to be myself now. No, I want to change, isn't it? If I am happy being myself, why will I come and sit in this class? The very class that we are sitting in this, the very fact that we are sitting in this class means Not only in this class, nobody is happy wherever they are with what they are. If I am happy being what I am today, there is no need for any change. But then at any given point of time, I can never be happy with where I am, what I am. I can be in the best of position in the eyes of others, or I can be in the worst of position. It doesn't make any difference. Why it doesn't make any difference? Because I want to change. There is this continuous thirst. There is this continuous thing in a human being, in very life itself, that drives the change. It means if I am in a position that I do not want to be in now, it implies what? I exercised my freedom wrongly in the past. It means that I exercised my freedom wrongly in the past, as a result of which I am what I am today, and I am not satisfied with what I am today. But sir, I am a very happy, contented person. Maybe in one area there may be some contentment. If there is an overall purnatvam, contentment means purnatvam. If there is an overall purnatvam, then that is moksha. We have attained the ultimate state. The very fact that we want to change itself implies that I am not contented with, I am not happy being who I am. And then I want to find out, why am I like this? What caused this? Society, environment, country, upbringing, all these are reasons for what you are today, is one way of thinking. Another way of thinking that Vedanta comes in is, you are what you are is because of your own making. Destiny, we have seen that. But the power of destiny, how much, this is the crux, how much ever you have done the wrong choices in the past, that the total power of destiny cannot overshoot the power of Purushartha, the free will. It's there. How much ever the power of destiny is, it cannot neutralize Purushartha. The fact that it is not able to neutralize Purushartha, because Purushartha is a parallel, distinct, different force. In law of destiny, we spoke about the past. In law of karma, we are going to talk about the parallel force, which is called Purushartha. In English, it is translated as self-effort. Technically, layperson's terms, it's called as free will. In layperson's terms, it is called as free will. Technically, it is called self-effort. English, Sanskrit, Purushartha. Therefore, you understand that that unit Purushartha, the self-effort that is running parallel, if exercised rightly, will be able to neutralize the entire prarabdha. If all the prarabdha is wiped out, my entire past is wiped out. I can change completely. So from this, what do we understand? A human being has, a human life is a combination of two. The combination of prarabdha and Purushartha. It's a combination of two. The combination of prarabdha and the combination of Purushartha. A simple example. The height is your prarabdha, the weight is your purushartha. The height of the body can be called as prarabdha, the weight of the body is purushartha, because you can go on increasing the weight, decreasing the weight. No, you can become obese and become fit. So one part of it is prarabdha, another part of it is purushartha. It's as simple as that. So you focus on that which is. So instead of worrying about the height, you worry about the weight. For the height is predetermined, the weight is what you do. So you can use this as an example, even though it doesn't convey certain aspects completely. I won't call it as a complete example, because but still it conveys one angle. What is that? Something that is fixed, something that you can fix. These two forces, prarabdha and purushartha. That which can be changed because of your effort, free will. Now, when it comes to these two words, prarabdha and purushartha, we understand what? Purushartha has two meanings now. One is an intrinsic aspect. Intrinsic aspect means something to be attained for its own sake. Instrumental aspect, whatever serves as a means to it. Purushartha has two aspects. One is the intrinsic aspect. Intrinsic aspects means attainment, getting something, the goal. Another is the means to the goal. So Purushartha has two parts, the goal and the means to get to the goal. Are you able to follow? One is the means, another is, one is the end, the goal, the other is the means to get to that goal. Goal implies future. Therefore, Purushartha is always connected to the future. Prarabdha. Arabdha comes from the root. I'm not going to the Sanskrit roots of it. That which has started to fructify. That is prarabdha. That which has started to fructify, because the momentum is very powerful. The momentum is strong, powerful. It has started to fructify. The second thing of prarabdha is, as it gets fructifying, it loses its strength. If you don't use your if you are using your present purushartha rightly, even to say present purushartha is wrong. If you are using your purushartha rightly, the prarabdha, the force of the prarabdha gets diminished. If you are not employing the purushartha rightly, what you will be doing? You will continue to move in the direction of the prarabdha, thereby continuing the prarabdha onto the future also. For example, if I am an illiterate and I continue to remain illiterate, my future is also going to be one of illiteracy. So, prarabdha is that which has started to fructify. Second is, when it fructifies, it loses its strength. All that you got to make sure is what? What you got to make sure? Don't refill the tank. The tank is full. the petrol tank is full. As it is emptying, prarabdha is getting over. Using the purushartha, what you do, don't add up to it. Now people, because of wrong way of living in the present, they go on adding up to it, and then they complain that whatever I do, there is no change that is happening. Whatever I do, there is no change that is happening. Whatever I do, there is no change that is happening. Vedanta comes and says it is absolutely wrong. The change is happening. What is the change that is happening? The wrong direction is continued. No. How can you say that the change is not happening? Intensified. The wrong direction is getting more and more intensified. Therefore, these are the two words, prarabdha and purushartha. In law of karma, these two words are very important to understand. Then the other set of three words, and prarabdha meaning will be the same in both. Then the other set of three words, sanchita, agami, prarabdha. Sanchita means the total. Sanchita means the total. The total effect of your thoughts, words, and deeds. Sanchita is the total. The sum of your thoughts, words, and deed. That is called sanchita. The most powerful that has come out of it, which has started to fructify, is prarabdha. The most powerful that has started to fructify, that has come into a manifestation and started to fructify, is called prarabdha. So out of sanchita, prarabdha comes out. And your entire sanchita is not your prarabdha. Only a small portion of it is your prarabdha. And then what remains? The sanchita remains. So after prarabdha has come out, whatever is left over is called agami. Yet to come. Yet to come, please understand. Yet to come means you have already created it. You have already created it. You don't know what it is, and you will know only when it starts manifesting. This is agami karma. Imagine you have created it, and you have no way of knowing it, and you will know it only when it starts manifesting. That's where these people say, be careful, be careful, be careful. Why you got to be careful is because at least the prarabdha has started to manifest. You know, agami is yet to come. When we say agami is yet to come, what is implied in that? It is already created. You have already created it, waiting for it to manifest. What is it waiting for to manifest? For the current prarabdha to get over. If the present prarabdha gets over, that is waiting. Here comes purushartha. Here comes purushartha. What does purushartha do? Through knowledge and whatever the prescribed courses are, the agami karma gets wiped out completely. The sanchita gets wiped out completely. Prarabdha anyway prarabdha will die anyway by itself. You need not worry anything about prarabdha at all, because anyway it will die by itself as long as you are not maintaining the direction. How do you create your karmas? How do we create a karma? by thought, by word, by deed. Thought, word, deed. Is it just the thought? Is it just the word? Is it just the deed? No. It is not just the thought. It is not just the word. It is not just the deed. It is the attitude with which the thought is entertained, the attitude with which the word is used, the attitude with which action is done. So thought, word, and deed within brackets. What? Attitude. There's no change. There's no escape from it. So attitude. So first thing is what? We work backwards. Thought, just the thought of helping. Some result you get. That's why in the very first class, when we introduced law of karma, we said karma means action. Karma means the result of an action also. We keep using the word karma interchangeably for both. So because the word karma means action, the word karma means the result of an action also. So you entertain a thought of helping. You get some result. You do it in action. You get a result. What gives you more result? A thought or the action? You have a thought of wanting to help, genuine thought, and then you go about it, putting it into action. There is a result for both. There is a phala, there is the karma for both. What is more? Thought or action? It is the action. I think universally all of us will agree that it is action. So first thing, law of karma says, be careful about your action, because that gets maximum. Be careful about your action. In order to be careful about your action, you got to have so much of knowledge to guide that action. This is where knowledge comes in. So we all understand that the intensity of karma is based on the three: the thought, the word, the deed. Of the three, we understand that I want to do charity and I actually do charity. And we understand the difference. What is the difference? Action is more powerful than the thought. Or the thoughts multiplied itself becomes an action. Therefore, in the reduction of karma, where do you start? Focusing on your action. This is where Vedanta comes and says karma yoga is very important in the path to evolution. Karma yoga plays a very important role, because it is karma yoga that reduces the intensity of the agami karma. When the intensity of the agami karma is reduced, the mind is more available for reflection, contemplation. The mind that is available for reflection, contemplation gains jnanam, the true knowledge, attains moksha. So the law of karma talks about your present status. Law of karma talks about your future. At the same time, it talks about your moksha. It talks about your past. It talks about your what to do in the present, and it talks about the moksha too. And we have lot of discussion on this chapter called the law of karma. With these 3 words, sorry, the 4 or 5 words, the flow becomes clear. The flow becomes clear. What is the flow? The sanchita karma, the agami karma, and the prarabdha karma. How did you acquire that sanchita karma? And the sanchita karma having 2 forces, agami and prarabdha. How did you acquire the sanchita karma? You acquired the sanchita karma by purushartha. Your own purushartha created your own karma. Accumulated past actions for which the fruits are experienced now. The accumulated past actions for which the fruits are experienced now. And it is destroyed only when the force is spent. How do you acquire the momentum? The momentum is acquired by purushartha. Where does knowledge come in here? Knowledge guides the purushartha. Knowledge is that which teaches you how to make use of purushartha rightly, properly. It is knowledge. Minus this knowledge, what will happen? Whatever has happened to us today is because of not having this knowledge in the past. Because of not having this knowledge in the past, the purushartha was not guided properly. And if you start guiding the purushartha properly, all the existing karmas get wiped out, and the extinguishing the existing karmas. Extinguishing the existing karmas is preparation for contemplation. In contemplation, you realize what? In contemplation, you realize what? Whatever we are talking about, this law of karma, the sanchita, the prarabdha, the purushartha, all this is nothing but maya. In contemplation, you understand. So on the one hand, we see it as a law of causation which governs the entire life, and then at the stage of contemplation, you understand all this as maya. If law of karma is very difficult to understand, maya is almost impossible. In fact, the very definition of maya is that. The very definition of maya is that it is called anirvachaniya, indescribable, non-understandable. When we go there, we will see that. How it continues. Because when you get rid of your karmas, even though technically we call it as moksha, what factually happens is, when the karmas gets exhausted, you turn more and more contemplative. And what is contemplative means? What is contemplation? What is called nididhyasana? What is Nididhyasana? Nididhyasana is a conviction that karmas are product of ignorance. And all that you got to do is gain knowledge. That's why all great masters, they go on saying, gain knowledge, gain knowledge, gain knowledge. And we turn back and say, I have done enough Shravana. So much I have heard, sir. In fact, we have been hearing all this even before you are born. Even before you are born, we have started to hearing all this, but nothing is happening. So Shravana, Manana is about the law of karma. Nididhyasana is an understanding that it is Maya. So moksha comes from what? Moksha, liberation, comes from recognizing the true nature. In order to recognize the true nature, always refer to the Atmabodha example. Lamp covered by the pot. Lamp covered by the pot. He gives the example of the sunlight covered by the roof. You put a roof, the sunlight is denied. You remove the roof, the already existing sunlight becomes visible. In order to ensure that all your karmas get wiped out, what is relevant? What is important? Very important is this awareness. And what does awareness means? I'm not thinking what to say next. You pause for 5 seconds, the thought starts going somewhere. It goes somewhere, it goes. Where all it goes, we don't know, but definitely goes. In Sanskrit, nowadays they call us multitasking, no? In Sanskrit, we have so many, it's a training. Multitasking is nothing but a training. We have Ashtavadanis, Dashavadanis, Shatavadanis. Ashta means they can do 8 things at a time. Ashtavadanis. Dashavadanis, 10 things at a time. Shatavadanis. Has anybody seen any of their meetings? Has anybody seen Ashtavadanis, Dashavadanis and all? Correct. Correct. Otherwise, in a story, Shatavadanis, 100 things. It is just the training of the mind. Going all over the place. Each and every thought is creating a seed in that direction. A groove is formed. A groove is formed. In awareness, what do? You make sure that you stay put with one. In one of the class, not in this classroom, but on the Zoom, isn't it? Now only the Zoom has come. Previously in the classes, in one of the classes, I said, if you can do multitasking, I can also do multitasking, I said. If you can talk on the phone and listen to the class, I can talk on the phone and teach also, I said. If you can do multitasking, I can also do my multitasking. What is the problem? So let us have an understanding, I said. What is understanding? You will not do multitasking. I will also not do multitasking. Because if you can do that, I can also do that. No. But then, no, you should not do, but I will do now. How? If your thoughts go all over the place, my thoughts also can go all over the place. As you are listening, if your thoughts can go all over the place, as I am talking, my thoughts also can go all over the place. Quite a few got very annoyed when I said that. Said we both will come to an agreement. What? As I am talking, I will talk on the phone also. As I am talking, I will call. I will call my family. I will call my wife and ask what is for lunch today and continue the talk. What is your problem? Because 3 times you say switch off the phone, 4 times you say switch off, they don't. If it is so important, if that is so important, Purushartha has been spent on those important things in the past. That is why you are what you are today. Because you have spent your Purushartha on these so-called important things in the past. What has happened to you today? I am so dissatisfied with where I am. I am so discontent with where I am. I wanted to change. I blame myself. I want to correct myself. It's not that I want to become better. I want to correct myself. Do you understand the difference between the two? One is wanting to become better. Another is wanting to correct. And most of the time we are doing correction. Correction by default, we think it has growth. Actually, it is not growth. It is like you become obese and then exercise and reduce it. You have not done anything positive. All that you have done is you have undone something. Knowledge is important to make you understand that don't keep undoing it. Do something and undo that. Do something and undo that. Don't get into this cycle. Knowledge says, make use of the prarabdha. Make use of the Purushartha rightly. That is law of karma Vedanta. The knowledge of Vedanta helps in guiding the Purushartha rightly. How do you know that your Purushartha is guided rightly? This is where we have so many Puranic stories describing it. Rama in the Ramayana, Valmiki Ramayana, all Ramayana has the same story, but then minor differences. But Valmiki Ramayana is what I prefer a lot. In Valmiki Ramayana, Rama was said that you are going to become the king. You are going to be coronated as the king. He is getting ready for the coronation and he is coming. The father says, go to forest. Because of the knowledge, he was happy when he was going to get the kingship. When he was told to go to forest, everybody started talking about, lamenting about destiny, etc. Rama says beautifully, he says, yesterday I was told to be the king. Today I am told to go to the forest. Instead of lamenting about the past, let us focus on what I got to do now. What is it that got to do now? Go to the forest. And the minister takes him to the forest. Very beautiful scene, huh? Valmiki Ramayana. I'm not going into the details of this. Very beautifully, the minister drives him to the forest. and he comes back, leaves him in the forest. The empty chariot is coming back. And when they saw the empty chariot, everybody understood that Rama is gone, and they all come back very dejected. And he comes to Dasharatha and tells Dasharatha something very, very important. He tells Dasharatha, serving you for so long, why you gave me this punishment? He asked. Is this I have served you for so long, genuinely, sincerely, and why did you give me this punishment? What is the punishment? The punishment of having to leave Rama in the forest. Dasharatha asked what happened, and when the minister said this is what happened, Dasharatha dies. What happened? You know, Rama doesn't have hair like Vijay, Arvindan. He doesn't have hair like that. He has long, beautiful hair. That's how it's described. And that hair has to be, for 14 years, Rama had matted locks. And when he comes back to become the king, Shatrughna, another brother, Valmiki described, washes his hair so beautifully so that the natural beauty of Rama's hair comes back. That is 14 years later. Now, what Rama did to his hair, there is a special milk from one of the plant. It takes the milk, applies it to the hair and ties it around. Why that milk is applied? Because if you apply that milk, hair will get sticky. The minister is telling Dasharatha, where we all should have seen Rama's hair bathed with the holy waters. I saw him using, and when he heard that description, Dasharatha dies. Now, what does that got to do with Prarabdha and Purushartha? When everybody was lamenting and crying and worrying and everything, that man, Rama, he knew exactly how to handle the situation. Handling the situation is Purushartha. That has to be guided by knowledge. This is where the knowledge of law of karma comes into guiding Purushartha. If this knowledge isn't there to guide Purushartha, then what guides your Purushartha? This knowledge isn't there to guide Purushartha, then what guides your Purushartha? Your own past. What is your own past? What is your own past? Likes and dislikes. Okay. From where does this likes and dislikes come? Ignorance. So the continuity of ignorance happens. So using Purushartha, instead of wiping out the ignorance, you continue to strengthen your ignorance. So what knowledge does? The effect of the past means, what does Vedantic knowledge with Purushartha do now? Prarabdha, it doesn't touch, but it takes care of the entire Agami karma. When the entire Agami karma is gone, the total Sanchita is gone. And that person is not worried about his Prarabdha. Why he is not worried about the Prarabdha? Because anyway, Prarabdha is anyway it is diminishing. And it will die down by itself. When prarabdha dies down by itself, it is called videha mukti. When all agami karma, sanchita karma is wiped out, it is called jivan mukti. Jivan mukti is when the entire sanchita agamis are wiped out. But deha is still there. The body is still there, doing some actions because of the prarabdha. And that also extinguishes itself at one point of time. What happens to the mukti? The end of the body is not the end of mukti. The end of the body is not end of liberation. Body goes away, liberation continues. This is how law of karma, the lesson law of karma, talks about the past, talks about the present, and also about the future. Future as an elimination of agami karma, sanchita karma. So for all practical purposes, what does the sadhak do? For all practical purposes, what does the spiritual practitioner does? Instead of worrying about what is the distinction between prarabdha and agami, because agami karma can never be known, how can you know that? And prarabdha anyway will function. What does a spiritual practitioner do now? He assumes everything as agami karma only. Using the purushartha, he wipes it out. So, why he will not worry about this distinction of prarabdha and purushartha? Agami karma. Because agami karma is that which is not known. How can you deal with that which is not yet to manifest? That's why people go to the horoscope man, wanting to know what is going to manifest tomorrow. And the horoscope person also will say, this is what is going to manifest tomorrow. We really don't know. Nobody knows that, including the horoscope. Nobody will know that part of it. He can say about the past. What to do as far as the future is concerned? As far as the future is concerned, you can only focus on the present. As far as the future is concerned, you can only focus on the present. On the present means exercising purushartha. When agami karma goes away, your kartrutva goes away. Therefore, prarabdha will continue, but you will say, I am detached from it. Prarabdha continues, and you understand that prarabdha is the instruments got to go through that, and you are free from it. Are you able to follow? Therefore, all that we got to do is what? A spiritual practitioner, instead of worrying about the prarabdha, he worries about the purushartha. Not just the purushartha guided. Guided by what? Guided by knowledge. Therefore, the law of karma emphasizes the importance of knowledge also. Because the unguided purushartha of the past is your present. Correct? To put it in one word, the unguided purushartha of your past is your present. If the same is continuing, this is what it will be the future also. That's why in another context, when we discuss about law of karma, we always say, look at your present, you will know your future. Look at your present, you will know your your future. Why? Because you know whether your Purushartha is guided or not. So all that you got to do is what? Make sure that your Purushartha is guided. Guided by what? Guided by knowledge. What is the knowledge? At one level, it is karma bhakti, shravana manana. At another level, it is nididhyasanam, contemplation. Nididhyasana means contemplation. So at one level, it is shravana manana, karma bhakti. At another level, it is contemplation. And I also briefly explained what contemplation is. What is contemplation? Contemplation is nothing but recognition of Maya and staying put in that idea that it is Maya. That is contemplation. The mind, because of its doubts, cannot stay put in that idea of Maya. Because of the force, it says, no, even though we can intellectually conceive the idea of Maya, but the mind doesn't stay put in this idea. How to make the mind stay put? Do a lot of manana, reflection. And what is manana? Understand it like this. Manana equals analytical repetition. Mechanical repetition is memory. Mananam is analytical repetition. That's why we go through the analysis again and again and again. Even if you, even if you keep continuously listening, itself is a reflection. Why the continuous listening itself, continuous Shravana itself is a reflection? Because it is analyzed. It is not just repeated. It is analyzed over and over, again and again and again. So what is reflection? The definition of reflection: thinking. What is thinking means? Analytical repetition. Mechanical repetition is memory. Mechanically, I can repeat. That is memory. That doesn't turn into a conviction. So by Purushartha, so what do I make use of the Purushartha rightly? What is the right use of Purushartha? The right use of Purushartha is Shravana, not multitasking Shravana, single pointed Shravana. Why? Because in single pointed Shravana, there is the default manana. That's why we don't repeat it, we analyze it. Sometimes analysis may be repetitive, sometimes there may be a new angle to it. And every time you can't bring new angles, no. Sometimes you can come up with something new. Sometimes it may look new, but it may be the same thing reworded. All this drama we got to do. Why? That is manana, reflection. So analytical repetition is reflection. In this analytical repetition, what becomes clear? The knowledge, you are stabilized in doubts goes away. The doubts goes away. When the doubts are gone, the mind focuses. And you need to focus on what? Contemplation. And what is contemplation? Maya. That is why after law of karma comes the theory of perception, then comes the Maya. Now in between, what is this theory of perception? When we go there, I'll explain the connection. Why law of karma comes, and then the theory of perception comes, and then comes Maya. The important words: Sanchita, Agami, Prarabdha, Purushartha. 4 words. And you should never have a doubt about these 4 words. And whenever we talk about karma, whenever we use the word karma, in some context, it means Sanchita. In some context, it means Prarabdha. In some context, it means Agami. In some context, it will mean Purushartha also. Why can't you use one word? Why can't you use the precise word? If you use the precise word, scope for analysis becomes less. You use this word, there is the material for us to probe deeper. Therefore, remember these 4 words in this law of karma. Sanchita, Agami, Prarabdha, and Purushartha. With this, we conclude for today. We read the lesson law of karma next week. With this understanding of 4 words, we read the lesson law of karma next week. Is there anything that we have to, any clarifications do we have? Your host, who is the host today?
No clarification, sir. Nothing, sir.
Oh, nothing. Okay.
Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Anshu raised hand. Here is Anshu.
Yes.
Where are you?
So,
Yes.
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 So when we say that there is intrinsic purushartha and instrumental, so
Yes.
does it mean the intrinsic is then the moksha and instrument is that we use purushartha to get there?
Yes. Intrinsic is moksha is intrinsic. Relatively intrinsic becomes dharma artha kama. In the true sense, intrinsic is moksha. Because how much ever dharma artha kama comes, the dissatisfaction continues at a very subtler level. Some suffocation continues. Therefore, we cannot call it as intrinsic. Intrinsic means you get it, having gotten it, there is nothing more to get. That is intrinsic. Having gotten it, there is nothing more. That is why Purushartha can be defined as an end which is consciously sought to be accomplished, either for its own sake or for the sake of utilizing it as a means to accomplishing another end. Accomplishing another end means I acquire money for what? Another end. That is for what? Another end. That is for what? Another end. Ultimately, we reach a point where after that there is no further end. That is intrinsic. Are you able to follow? I acquire wealth. If acquisition of wealth itself is an end, I should be happy looking at the bank balance, isn't it? No, I'm not happy looking at the bank balance. That wealth, that the money that I earn must translate into objects around me. So there, wealth is not an end in itself. Wealth becomes a means to an end. Because I want those objects. It's not that I want money. I want money only because I want those objects. Correct? Okay. Is those objects an end in itself? It looks like that. But then on deeper understanding, it is not like that. That objects in itself becomes a means for something else. It becomes a means for something else. It becomes a means for something else. In reflection, we go through all this. And then we understand what we come to the ultimate end. What is that ultimate end? After which there is nothing after this, there is nothing more to get. But sir, how do we know self-realization is the end? In case if there is something after self-realization also, it means we'll say, okay, go back to Manana. Go back to Manana again. Since you have not done Manana properly, these doubts are lingering. Are you able to follow? So, Manana clears up all these doubts and you get into that point. So, that ultimate end, seeking that, attaining that, there is nothing, there is no more to attain. That is what moksha is defined as. After getting it, there is nothing more that you will seek. is an impossible, improbable state as far as the world is concerned, because anything in the world you cannot stop with it. You have to use it as a means for something else. So, in the ultimate sense, intrinsic aspect, for its own sake. What is moksha for? To get away from pain and misery. Yeah? No. You can't say that. What is moksha for? For what purpose is moksha? For what purpose is this? In Nididhyasana, you understand there is no purpose for moksha. Why? Because that's your, since your intrinsic being is that, how can there be a purpose for it? In the initial stages, moksha looks like a freedom. Freedom from pain and misery. In Nididhyasana state, you understand moksha is not freedom from pain and misery, because at the Sravana, Manana level itself, you have overcome pain and misery. Where is the difficulty? Are you able to follow? So, intrinsic aspect means utilizing it, accomplishing it for its own sake, not utilizing it for something else. You follow? Sure.
Yes.
Is it okay?
Yes. Sir, I have one more question.
Yes, please.
Two actually. One is.
My God, you said one and you are increasing it to two.
So how? So awareness. We are aware that, not aware. We are mindful that there are lots of thoughts which go at the same time. How can we reduce it? Because even though you consciously want to reduce, it's not reducing. So what can we do?
I cannot reduce the thought. I can make it focused on one. The effort has to be made to keep it focused on one. That effort to keep it focused on one reduces the other thoughts. So, how does one reduce the thoughts? By keeping it focused on one. That's why in Karma Yoga, the ideal becomes the one, the goal becomes the one. In Bhakti Yoga, the divine becomes that one. Because of you focusing your thought on one, you are not allowing it to go to the other areas. When thoughts do not go, the intensity dies away. Because dhyayato vishayan pumsaha. 62-63, chapter 2. The momentum is given by you. How the momentum is given by you? By you thinking about it. The question is, how do I stop thinking about it? You cannot stop it. For by nature, thoughts cannot be stopped. No. How can you stop the thought? That's what they are trying in meditation, where we come and say it doesn't work like that, because you cannot stop it. You can fix it on one. You can only fix it on one. That's what in the Bhagavad Gita, throughout the Gita, he keeps on saying, fix it on me. Mai arpita mano buddhihi. Maya sakta manah partha. Fix it. Fix it. Fix it. It is fixation on one. Are you able to follow? So it is fixation on one. That fixation on one brings about an awareness that the thoughts are distracted. And when it is getting distracted, what do you do again? When it is getting distracted, you don't bring the thoughts back. You remind yourself of the goal. When you remind yourself of the goal, the thoughts comes back by itself. So by you reminding the goal, you are attracting the mind to the goal. Attract the mind to the goal. How do you attract the mind to the goal? Wherever it gets distracted, remind yourself about the goal. That's why everyday Shravana and Manana is so important, we say. Everyday Shravana and Manana is so important because it is that which keeps the fixation. So you can never stop the thought. In fact, stopping the thought is such a wrong notion people have, and it is a dangerous thing also. They are stopping it because they don't know what they are dealing with. You stop it, it behaves as though it is obeying you immediately, and it will come back with a greater momentum. Mind is such a cunning thing. It looks as though it will obey immediately, it will obey. But then it's not obeying. It is just pretending, waiting to come back with a greater force. Since we have known about this mind so much in detail in Vedanta, we don't talk about stopping the thought, we talk about fixation of thought. There is a difference between the two. That's why in meditation, in the Nididhyasana, we don't talk about stopping the thought. We talk about fixing it on, fix it on me, fix it on me. Throughout the Bhagavad Gita, he keeps saying that, no? Fix it on me, fix it on me, fix it on me. Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. Verse number 66, chapter 18. Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tva sarva papebhyah mokshayishyami ma shuchah. Fix it on me, you get moksha. What is fixing it on me means? It is the way to prevent the mind from getting distracted. Is it okay, Anshu?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. With this, we, one more you said, no, sorry. Yes.
That's just a clarification from the last question I asked in the last class. If I am not aware and I'm walking, I crush insects. So that you said you have to be more aware. But there are things that we do intentionally, like pesticides. So how do we accommodate that? Should we do? Should we not do?
Yes, the lower has to be, the lower gets sacrificed for the higher. That's the law. There's no karma involved here. The lower gets sacrificed for the higher. Meaning, in order to save the pesticide, in order to save the pest, you can lose the opportunity of being a human being. Moksha itself you can lose because you want to save the pest. Vedanta says, be realistic in life. You don't get emotional like that. Be realistic in life. What is being realistic in life means? Ahimsa is an attitude. Ahimsa is an attitude. At times, life demands actions, which is himsa. So you can never have ahimsa action. You can only have ahimsa as an attitude. Therefore, when you are working for a higher ideal, unselfish, selfless life, when you are trying to live an unselfish life, when you are trying to lead a selfless life, the very attitude of you wanting to be doing service itself will bring an awareness of not wanting to injure. That's why Jainism took it to extremity. Jainism took it to extremity. What is the extremity it took it to? Cover the face so that masking was started by Jainism, I think. Yeah. I don't know whether maybe they also got COVID, then we don't know. Yeah. They started that mask. Why? When you are breathing in also, you are destroying. Destroying. As long as you are alive, when you are eating something, something gets destroyed. Then how does karma work here? That is why I said even today, the thought, the word, the action, is it the thought? Is it the word? Is it the action? Or is it just the thought, the word, the action? Or is it the attitude behind it? If you say it is the attitude behind it, we understand it as no problem. There's no problem. What is no problem? That as long as intentions aren't there, you are safe. And to be aware of your intentions is knowledge. Because even an ignorant person can say the same thing. No. Then what is the difference? Awareness. Awareness of what? Not causing injury. We can say viruses also have life in it. So I will sacrifice my body for viruses to survive. I can say that. It's not wrong. A person can say that also. We're not saying it's right or wrong. Then that person's life goal is what? Then that person's goal in life is to save the viruses, isn't it? We can save the virus, we can save the bacteria, we can save the animals, we can save everything. And we lost the precious. Because we get emotional with this. Vedanta comes and says, as long as you are not causing injury to any of this, you cause injury for what? For your pleasure. You cause injury for the sake of your pleasure. The lion is hunting. The lion is running to catch the deer. The deer is running to save itself from the lion. In the process, how many creatures get killed? They don't incur any karma at all. Why? They have no intention of hurting anything. Are you able to follow? They are doing actions according to their dharma. It's guided. It's guided actions. As long as the actions are guided, you are free from karma. Guided by what? Not guided by loka sangraha, guided by the ultimate goal. If it is not guided by the ultimate goal, working for loka sangraha will get you punya karma. Because you are so concerned about the welfare of other species, you are taking care of them, you develop a lot of punya karma. Are you able to follow? And punya karma is diminishing by nature. So we don't get into that punya karma level. We want to do it. We want to do something different. Is it okay, Anshu? Is it helpful?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much.
With this, we conclude for today and we continue next session.